Hey guys, Edre here. I'm going to be doing a brand new album review and the first album review of 2021. However, it is an album that came out in 2020. It is from Christmas 2020, so that should be a dead giveaway. I am reviewing the new Playboi Carti album, the long-awaited Whole Lotta Red. A bit of background going into this review, like I do with all of my reviews. I had relatively decent expectations for this album. I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of Die Lit. I appreciated the project, I enjoyed the project, and I was definitely looking forward to a Whole Lot of Red. I thought Die Lit definitely showed a lot of artistic and just growth for Playboi Carti's career. However, I didn't really think it was the masterpiece that many outlets acted it was, and many of his fans acted like it was. But that being said, compared to his self-titled, I thought it was definitely an improvement. So, considering how much hype was going into this album, I was expecting something at least of Die Lit quality, if not better. And I gotta say, this took me quite a few listens to really come up with an opinion. And the reason is because initially, if I'm being 100% honest with you, I couldn't stand Whole Lotta Red at all when I first heard it. I was close to giving it a 1. I thought it was a jumbled mess. Then I went back and listened to some stuff from Die Lit and his self-titled and compared it. I also listened to some other albums of this style, and then I kind of came back and revisited it. And I gotta say, my opinion has just shifted a slight bit. I'm still not crazy about it, but let me get into the details. Musically, this album opens up with Rockstar Made, which in my opinion was probably the worst song he could have chosen to open this up with. It has that glitchy trap instrumental, which is something we have all come to know and expect. However, this is a sonic style that appears throughout this entire album, and this is a 24-song album, and I start to get a little tired of it after just a few tracks, because very few tracks on this project really do much to change it up from what you first hear on Rockstar Made. You know, well, this might sound sonically interesting, that sort of glitchy instrumental. It gets very tiring very fast. Very few tracks really stand out to me since most of them follow through with the same exact derivative sound without doing much to it. That being said, Vamp Anthem has this sort of like organ synth pad on it, which is something I thought was interesting, something that was appealing to my ears, and it was nice to hear it change up a little bit. However, calling it a big change up is pushing it, since the beat underneath the little organ pad is roughly the same. I honestly don't have too much else to talk about from a more musical and beat-oriented standpoint here, since most of them go through a very similar path with very little difference. And unfortunately, that does become a problem as the album goes on. At least with Die Lit, there was at least a little bit of diversity amongst the tracks and the overall sounds. But I do feel like on Whole Lotta Red, he sticks to the basics. He sticks to what he knows his fans will enjoy and what works for him. And unfortunately, that lack of risk-taking really does drag this album down. And what I mean by lack of risk-taking, I mean in terms of changing it up. He stays very consistent. And unfortunately, it drags it down. Lyrically and vocally, however, I want to talk a little bit about some stuff here. Rockstar Made, the opening track, once again, might just be one of the most repetitive and unnecessary openers in Playboi Carti's entire career. However, the song Jump Out the House makes Rockstar Made look like a lyrical masterpiece. Probably my least favorite track on the album, or one of them at least, Jump Out the House. It just has one of those hooks that might just be one of the most repetitive, most boring, and just most obnoxious hooks I think I've ever heard in Playboi Carti's career. Playboi Carti's aggressive delivery throughout this album, once again, is not a huge problem. I think it definitely shows that he is somewhat passionate about much of the material on here. He definitely does give it his all on some tracks. However, it becomes quite an issue the further you get into this album, because just like the music, he doesn't really seem to do much to change up his delivery at all amongst 24 songs. So when you have beats and rhythms that sound roughly the same time and time and time again, along with vocal deliveries that are the same every single track, it gets very tiring. Now, that being said, the track Teen X with Future might be another one that is a contender for being the worst on the album. Because Playboi Carti does this weird sort of baby voice thing. I'm not sure how to describe it other than that. It's off-putting. It's one of the few times he tries changing it up, and he kind of falls flat on its face. So unfortunately, Teen X with Future kind of just spoiled that for me. Feature-wise, though, segueing right into there, Kanye West is featured on the track Go to the Moon. A song that is so all over the place that honestly not even Ye could really save it too much. You know, it has it feels like it has 20 different beat switch-ups, but not in a cool and innovative way like Sicko Mode or Stargazing on Travis Scott's Astroworld, but in a very confusing way, like he didn't know which one to choose, so he put it all in a blender, and this was the output. And Kanye West is not even the problem on this song. He tries his best to save it, but it doesn't help. And at the very end of the song, there's an abrupt beat switch and a transition into the track Stop Breathing. But if I wasn't looking at the track list, I would have thought it was a continuation of Go to the Moon because of how hectic that song is. And Metamorphosis featuring Kid Cudi might be one of the most disappointing tracks on here, because Kid Cudi did put out one of the most engaging projects of 2020, one of my favorite projects of 2020, Man on the Moon 3, and yet he is so underutilized on here. I feel like they had him play down just so he doesn't outshine Playboi Carti. And the song itself is just okay. It's average at best, and Kid Cudi can't even save it either. So unfortunately, feature-wise, I was left relatively disappointed. With all that being said, this is gearing up to be a very negative score, very negative review. However, I did just want to make one thing clear, so it's clear to people that I don't absolutely despise this project. Playboi Carti has been at the cutting edge of making off-putting, weird, and polarizing music for about his third release now. His debut album was a very polarizing one. His debut mixtape, Playboi Carti, I believe. That thing definitely polarized critics. Many people were left either praising it or hating it, and I was left more on the side of not really enjoying it. When Die Lit came out, it got much more critical praise, however, it was still relatively polarizing. I, for one, thought it showed much improvement from his debut, and I thought overall Die Lit showed him moving in the right direction. However, with all of that being said, I can't say Whole Lotta Red is the proper follow-up. Overall, the vast majority of these tracks really are around 2 minutes or less, and they really don't lead anywhere, and it just sounds ultimately relatively unfinished and effortless. Songs like On That Time start off very promising but end abruptly, and that is an issue, because if a song like that was dragged out longer and added more to it, it may have been one of my favorites on the album. However, it ended before it went anywhere. And while I, once again, wasn't the biggest fan of Die Lit, that album showed a lot of artistic improvement. And to me, Whole Lotta Red seems to be Playboi Carti going back to square one, to the quality of his music that we got on his debut mixtape, which to me wasn't that great. And unfortunately, this is very disappointing because I thought he was improving, and now he seems to have fallen backwards to square one. I do appreciate the eccentricity, though. I do appreciate the fact that Playboi Carti is an odd artist. He is not your average rapper. He is definitely out there. However, I just don't feel like the actual execution itself landed the way I think he wanted it to land. This is everything I kind of didn't want the follow-up to Die Lit to be. With all that being said, this was a very disappointing album for me. However, I did come back to it upon its release a few times, and it has grown on me a little bit, mainly just due to the fact that it is very eccentric. However, I still was massively disappointed with it, and I have settled on giving Playboi Carti's long-awaited Whole Lotta Red a big fat 3 out of 10. Anybody that doesn't know my reviews knows anything below a 5 is bad, anything above a 5 is good. So a 3 is a negative review. I was left relatively unsatisfied with this album, even though I appreciate the fact that he is still out there. He's still very eccentric and making some of the most eccentric hip-hop out there. I just feel like this execution on Whole Lotta Red pales in comparison to Die Lit, and is unfortunately gonna be a stain on his discography. With all that being said, Whole Lotta Red, 3 out of 10. Goodbye.